I get asked a lot of times about the rankings process itself and what actually goes into it. Or is it just like someone calls up from Florida and says, hey, I need our kids bumped up a star grade, and then you just do it? Obviously, that's not what's happening. But I really want you to take us into as much detail as you can, because I've heard it. So I want you to take the viewers into as much detail as you can about actually how thorough this is and how much, like on a phone call at least, fighting there is sometimes over grading kids. There's a lot of disagreement. Like there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of dialogue. It's not just, here's where we're going to rate this kid. Here's where we're going to rate that kid. All right, we're done. Let's go to lunch.
Well, for us, I think it starts with the film. In live person evaluations, people are like 247Sports. You guys don't watch full game film. We're at the games. Most of these guys that are ranked high, we've had people on our staff either attend full games or they're playing full games on TV, or there's so many platforms with NFHS and so many ways to watch full game films. My guy, Greg Biggins, our guy, who does the California Game of the Week for Fox Sports out in California. I get that game in Indianapolis here. I can watch Greg Biggins every Friday night. I can go to a local game here in Indianapolis, come home, and I can watch Mater Day versus St. John Bosco with Greg Biggins on the call Friday night. The Texas State football championships, also, I was able to watch those here in Indianapolis. So we're able to watch full game films. We're able to go see these prospects in person and see them play in person. And so I think that that's where it begins for us. We certainly put a lot of emphasis on verified athleticism. You look at these guys that are playing in the NFL. People are like, I don't want a combine guy. That guy's a combine guy. Most guys in the NFL are pretty damn good at combines, Josh. I'll take a combine guy that's good at football. And so verified athleticism, whether that's, averaging a double-double in basketball and being an above-the-rim player, certainly track data, wrestling, being all-state, being a state champ with that hand-to-hand combat, that leverage that you get doing that sport, and then baseball with the hand-eye coordination and things of that nature. All that stuff applies. Then we get to the reason why I think our rankings are getting better, and certainly we're not perfect, but I think if you look at basketball rankings, Josh, for the most part, a lot of those guys ranked high hit, because the basketball analysts are able to go to AAU events and see these prospects compete in a setting that's kind of comparable to what it's going to be in college. You're playing on the same size floor, and you're playing with the same rules for the most part. And so, and you're seeing, Josh Pate play against Steve Wiltfong 6-7 times. You have a good idea of who's better in that setting. Football, we're starting to get there more with, there's so much 7-on-7, and now you're seeing St. John Bosco go across the country and play St. Thomas Aquinas, and so you're seeing heavyweight high school football battles on the field, and with the opening finals and the All-America Bowl and the Under Armour All-America game and the Polynesian Bowl, we're seeing these guys in similar settings. So we're able to kind of compare and contrast, and then you certainly still get into the debate, well, Josh Pate's better than Steve Wiltfong now, but Steve Wiltfong maybe has more upside than Josh Pate. So those conversations are being had, but I think that all that kind of goes into the pot, and that's kind of our process. Now, certainly there's some disagreement when, your West Coast guys have a receiver that they love out West, and you're kind of comparing them to some guys in Texas, and you're comparing them to some guys in Florida. It can get heated when you're passionate about a guy you've seen more than others. And so that sometimes is the challenge of getting guys ranked.
Here's the other one that it really gets in the weeds sometimes. And I'm really curious as to how often this happens for you guys. So if I were to look at someone right now, he's going to be 16 or 17 or 18 years old. If I'm grading him in high school, Wiltfong, sometimes, especially guys who are going to go on to play major D1 college football, they are 90% physically developed by the time they're a senior in high school, but not all of them are. And so there are some very, very notable historic exceptions to this rule where you could be looking at a guy and he's still got baby fat on him, and he's still got a baby face, and he's just now getting patches of acne all over his cheeks, but you're looking at him and he's got all the makings of a future stud, but he's just maturing physically a little bit slower. And so you may look at him right now, and he's a junior in high school when you're going to really want to put a grade on him. And he's probably, let's say a 3-star caliber player, which is still a very good player. But yet you also say, man, my gut tells me he has got the upside to be a 5-star guy down the road, but I don't know that he's going to reach his physical potential and upside in high school. So then this gets really into the weeds. Are you grading the current product, or are you projecting forward to where you got half a dozen assistant coaches that you use as sources telling you, Steve, this dude, we're going to get him on campus. We're probably going to have to redshirt him. But by the time this dude's 19, especially by the time he's 20, he's going to be a stud for us. He just isn't that quite yet because he's the sapling that hasn't quite grown into the tree yet. How often does that happen?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the college feedback, because we're getting feedback from high school coaches, 7-on-7 coaches, and certainly next level sources on kids too. And that certainly factors into the decision. You take a guy like Henry Ruggs, who was kind of a late bloomer. We took a chance on him as our #1 ranked receiver because of the athleticism and the multi-sport profile. And he goes out and ultimately becomes the first receiver drafted. He was probably, on paper, when you look at that Alabama class, he was considered the third best receiver coming in at best. And so you're certainly projecting guys. But then on the flip side, you take a guy like Jeff Okuda. He was our #1 ranked corner. He's a guy that when you spend some time with Jeff Okuda, you could just tell how smart he was and how motivated he was. And you're trying to get to know these guys. You're trying to get to know their intangibles and what makes them tick and how smart they are. And when Jeff Okuda does his interview at the NFL Combine, he knew exactly how many passes he had given up and was able to have that back and forth exchange with the reporter, because he's just so on it and so detail oriented. And so like a guy like Chase Young, Chase Young probably wasn't coming out of high school. You could tell he was going to be absolutely ferocious, and what he developed into in college, those are some of the easier ones to pick out.